How's it going?
Hello, hello. How's it going?
Well, welcome to episode 2 of Creative Flux.
Creative Flux. Now we have a name.
Now we have a name. Last week we didn't have a name, and this is the name. It came to us, or came to me kind of quickly, and I was
Yeah,
just
I
like,
was gonna
you
say,
know
what's
what?
the story? What's the story? What did you feel like, Creative Flux when you heard that or thought of that, and you're like, this is it.
I think I went through the same process as when I created the Jellypod name, but just much more streamlined and compact. I wrote down a bunch of words all around like creativity, art, media, and things, and I threw them into ChatGPT a little bit, and I got some like thesaurus. And creative was something that we always kind of want to talk about because we're talking about creativity, talking about media, the future of media. And flux is also a really cool term as well because it's the change. It's the change in something over time. And I was
Yeah.
like,
I was gonna say we're
well,
not the first ones to put that together, but yeah,
no,
Black Forest Labs probably is mad at
yes,
us.
exactly, exactly. And so, like, yeah, there's the flux image models. But I was like, well, that's cool. I mean, it's you measure flux, measure the change, and creative. I was like, well, you know what? I didn't want to spend too much time on it. We could always change the name, but I thought it was pretty cool. And we
Yeah.
have creativeflux.com or no, creativefluxpodcast.com. So that's
Oh,
our
I didn't
podcast
know that.
website.
That's awesome. We get a
So
domain now. That's
we
awesome.
have a domain. All of the episodes will be up there and also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Um, so if you're listening in for the first time, check us out. Last week we talked about a lot of video models, VO3. We were supposed to talk about ElevenLabs V3 last week, but we didn't even get to it. So that's what today's going to be on, like a lot of text to speech stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a
So
huge field. So last week, it was video, and every field has subfields. So video has text to video, image to video we talked about, and even video to video, which is like taking a video and stylizing into other. We didn't talk about, and now there's also audio to video, which is like you take an audio file and an image, and you can combine it and you can animate the image with the audio. So similarly, text to speech is well, text to speech is a subvariant of a bigger field. The audio field, if you just break it down, there's text to speech, which is you put in some text and you get speech out. There's speech to speech, which is like you take a recording of me and you can take a recording of, I don't know, Walter White or whatever, and the same audio will come out, but in Walter White's voice. That's also called voice changer, if you're familiar with that, like people call it, but that's speech to speech. It's not quite voice changer because you don't just like change the tone. You can also change the way someone else would speak. So there's like a spectrum, like naive voice changer versus like, oh, just take the actual audio and really from first principles change it based on this new character's voice, etc. So it's a very interesting field. And within that, there's you can probably pair voice cloning with that. We at Jellypod do that too. We let you clone your voice, and you can generate with then put text in and generate that. So that you could say is text to speech to speech combined, right? You can get both aspects. And then the other side there's, and I do pair it with it, even though it's very different, is speech to text, which is you take an audio file and you transcribe it or translate it. And it's also called ASR in machine learning, which is automatic speech recognition. And that's its own field. And we should probably do an episode just on that because that's a very interesting field too. It's probably the OG field because
right,
for the
right,
longest time we never did text to speech until like recently. But ASR has been even in the 70s, 80s, Stephen Hawking, right? It's
totally.
been a field that's been ongoing, and it's probably the OG. I would say with image recognition and ASR have been the OG machine learning fields, probably,
Totally.
right?
Yeah, it's super interesting. I mean, I remember when I was in elementary school, like the big hype was Dragon Dictation, and it was
Mm,
probably the first software platform, at least the first big one that I remember, where you could speak to your computer and it would be like decent, and the architecture back then is just completely different than how it's done today. Like completely different fields. I mean, like you have. Um, I don't even know. Like, I don't know how much you know about how it used to work, but like, pretty simple. I mean, you take a word and kind of map what you're saying to like a word, and it was bad, and it just wasn't ever a field. Like, you try to talk and write an email, it just doesn't work. I mean,
Right. And the
Promise was
computer
there.
voice, like like the Stephen Hawking voice and stuff. But
Totally.
it
Yeah. And then Siri came out and changed the whole game. I mean, like Siri was definitely the first consumer product. I want to say Siri was before Alexa, yeah, for sure.
hmm
And iPhone 4S, when that came out, it was like pretty good. I mean, the voice of Siri back then was, you know, listenable. And I think that was the first time where it didn't sound like your robotic text to speech computer, what you'd see in like movies or in your other like devices. Um, so yeah, a lot has changed in text to speech and just in speech in general.
Yeah, there've been
So
all sorts of models. I think that's made. I feel like what was I think Google actually released the models that changed the game. It was it WAV2 sync or not WAV. Oh, sorry, Tortoise GTS was I think the big change, and I think
right,
that's what 11 Labs initially
right,
used. Now they probably have their own models, but Tortoise GTS was the game changer. I think that came out in 2019, 2020, and then suddenly it got really good. And I remember there were a bunch of startups. There was one in Seattle called Uberduck. They're still around, but
yeah,
they pivoted.
Zach Ocean.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know him? Yeah, I
I
met
met
him.
him. Yeah, I met him. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, cool guy. But they were initially just doing something similar to 11 Labs, and then they pivoted towards music, where they basically fine-tuned their models just for music. And then um, I don't want to go too much into details, but they used to have these models where you could like literally make a Drake model or whatever. Like it was all on their side. They had a marketplace actually of models with ratings. It was so cool. And then one day they just took it down. I think they just got sued by a bunch of different. And then they pivoted. I think now they just do music song videos, and that's their niche.
gotcha.
But yeah, Uberduck, yeah, that was a cool company back, for consumers.
Totally. No, that's interesting. I mean, like I remember reading about 11 Labs 2 starting off as a fine-tuned version of Tortoise. Um, and I never looked into it a little bit more, but I wonder if people listening, I'm assuming most people listening to this, if you're like in the field, you've heard of 11 Labs, but for people that aren't aware, 11 Labs is probably at least the number one, like the biggest text to speech provider. They just have like the highest, they've had the highest quality voices for a long time. There are some definitely competitors. They had the most languages supported. For the long time, it was 29 different languages. Then they added a few extra ones. They got up to 32. But the big thing that happened in the last like 2 weeks was the release of their newest V3 model, which supports 70 different languages, extremely expressive. You could add in laughter and sort of direction to speech, so you could say this in this way, or like slow it down, and really just prompt with sort of specific tags to make the speech do things and say things that aren't actually words and say things in different
Mm,
ways,
yeah,
right?
yeah, super
So it was
exciting.
pretty exciting. I mean, we were together when it came out, so or
Right, yeah.
right,
Yeah, I know. I remember I talked to the 11 Labs guys, I think the day before. They were like, oh, tomorrow, just wait for it. So,
right.
yeah, so I mean, you mentioned the emotional expressiveness and stuff. How does that, like, how do they surface that?
Yeah, I mean, so right now the best way to go about this, if you're interested in text to speech, is go to 11 Labs and go to their studio playground, and you get like this canvas, and it kind of guides you through this process of how do you create emotive, realistic speech. You create a host, or you create a voice. You get a voice from 11 Labs, one of their many in the library, and then you just type out the speech that you want the voice to say. But then if you want to add sort of laughter or like coughing or any of those non-verbal speaking like speech patterns, you'd put brackets around around the text. So say laugh in brackets, and then you'd say that was so funny and laughter, or cough. And so that, yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool. It works really well too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, these tags are so interesting, and also they're very natural. It's not like that's so funny, haha, but it's like that's so funny, ha. Like it
All right.
comes off as very natural, so they've really like made it very, fine-tuned it towards human language, which I found was very cool. I also found that on their studio, there's this, you can just add text and there's a button called enhance and alpha or whatever, and it'll add the tags for you, which, just based on, oh, after this, probably there should be laughter or cough or whatever. And so it's a very cool dimension, I think, you can add to really make it more expressive. It's before this, we didn't really have this. We used to have something called SSML tags, which is basically like HTML for voice. And so you could add stuff like, and you can still do it. You can add a tag, a different tag. Instead of the square brackets, you add a angle bracket, like break time 1.5 seconds between words, and it'll add pauses and stuff. But that was very like it was limited. It was probably stuff like prosody and stuff where you can add like 3 to 5 different settings, and so you're still limited. But these tags really allowed you to, I think, express a proper natural flow conversation, like and really hit a bunch of emotions, like you went from angry to sad to just like a soft voice whispering, etc. You can easily add all those features.
Right. I remember when we were first like building Jellypod out, like SSML, the speech synthesis markup language. I mean, it influenced some of the decisions that we had in podcasting. But now it's like, the interesting thing though too is like there's not an open standard when it comes to this. And so ElevenLabs went out and they defined like, hey, we're going to put these angle brackets, and you just put like a natural English text prompt, and that's going to be understood by the models. And I wonder if that's going to be the winning approach, because it may be, but to standardize across model providers, if somebody like OpenAI came out and like they have a text to speech, and it's very good, but it's not as they don't have all the different languages. They have like 6 voices or something. But it would be interesting. I think it would be useful for the community to have like an open sourced, schema language for this type of.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you mentioned OpenAI, because OpenAI has a very different approach. So OpenAI, I would say for the longest time they were the second. I mean, there's other ones we'll talk about, but OpenAI is a lot cheaper than ElevenLabs, I think. And if you actually do want to play around with, there's a site called OpenAI.fm, or if you just Google OpenAI FM, it comes up, and it lets you do it for free. And you can actually, as far as I know, there's no rate limit, so it's actually like a free text-to-speech UI they have for all their voices, which is cool. But OpenAI's approach has been more high level. They take away the customization that we just talked about, the tags. What they do is they have a system prompt and a text, and they rely on the fact that the context can capture the essence. So you can have like a rough cowboy voice, that's angry, and then you can say that's the system prompt, and then the actual prompt could be, hey, what are you looking at? And instead of saying, hey, what are you looking at, it just relies on the fact that you have the system prompt. It'll come out as, hey, what are you looking at, right? And they're like, you don't need to say, hey, and then he grunts loudly, and you just need to just say it, and the model should be smart enough to understand the context. And so it's an interesting approach. In a lot of ways, I think it's a more robust approach, because ideally, I mean, as the models get better, you think it would just get it. But at the same time, you always have this long tail of customization where you're like, I need that little laughter here and there. So I wonder if these two standards kind of meet in the middle, where you kind of get both,
No, for sure. I mean, I always wonder if like the right approach will be like this world model that has, really in-depth understanding of the world. I know when Logan Kilpatrick came to the AI's World Fair last 2 weeks ago, and they were talking about Gemini and like Google's approach. They're trying to, at least eventually, the goal is to consolidate all these different model offerings into one model where it's like just Gemini. There's no Gemini Pro, there's no Gemini Flash, there's no thinking, non-thinking, it's just Gemini. And based on, what you're trying to achieve, it will be able to do the thing that you want it to do. So whether that's generate text or generate audio, or video through VO, and it's like, it would be a very interesting world where that happens, because it's also going to be hard to parse sort of that information from the model.
So
but like
the LOTR, one model to rule them all.
Right. That's what and it makes it like the challenge thing too is like, even when we're going to ElevenLabs and text to speech, ElevenLabs, I think, has 6 or so models, maybe more. They have, V2, V2.5, they have V3, they have multilingual V3 or V2, turbo V2. It's like, why should I have to care about all these things. Like, I mean, it should just kind of work. I get this trade-offs. Like if I'm building, for example, I have a conversational agent, and I'm building out a call center where I want the first level of support agents to be like a low latency model. It's going to be better than today when you call a airline and you get put onto hold. Like this call may be recorded for quality assurance, and like that robotic voice is like that's the baseline today. But if you could just be better than that, and still like you could be really fast, low latency, just be already better. But I went on a tangent, but
No, no,
I
but
mean,
it's so interesting because you touched on voice agents. Because in text to speech, I mean, I would say there are two spectrums, and one is definitely more popular than the other. I feel like, at least in terms of commercial applications, which is voice agent. So we're talking more because we're Jellypod. We care about you creating amazing, rich conversation podcasts. So we are naturally attracted to the highest quality text to speech, even if it costs a little bit more, because we want the highest quality output because we're creatives and we're interested in generative media. That's our end, and I would say we're in the minority in terms of this industry. On the other
totally.
side is conversational agent call centers, because there's like billions of dollars of economic activity that passes through that channel. Every business, if you think about it, has some sort of customer support call center. So on that side, as you alluded to, it's not about having a rich quality voice. It's about low latency. Like, as soon as I start talking, can the agent immediately respond to me? And low cost, because if you're doing hundreds of thousands of calls per day, you want it at the lowest cost. You don't want to use ElevenLabs V3. You probably want to use a Flash or whatever.
Right.
So a lot of businesses focus on that, and they're not optimizing for the quality. And like you said, their baseline is the robotic R quality insurance, right? That voice. They're like, as long as we beat that, that's good enough. Let's move on.
Totally.
But it's also interesting because the conversational AI space has its own issues, and probably the biggest thing with real time is they call it. I think it's called the voice activity VAD, voice activity detection. It's basically if I'm talking to you. The naive way is I say something, the model takes it, it processes it, it gives the answer. In real life, that's a very bad way to have a conversation because there's this latency. So there are smart people who are working on this because usually the way it works is like if I'm saying to you, you started thinking about an answer as I'm talking to you. So you're ready to go as soon as I stop talking. Or you might even interject. You might say like, right, you're nodding your head right now as I'm talking, right? So there's these algorithms and things people are working on where a model will start streaming an answer midway, or it'll wait for some sort of a silence or a pause. As soon as I stop talking, it'll detect that and be like, all right, that's my cue. So I start talking again. And this is a whole space in this industry.
Totally.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, the whole interruption handling. I mean, like even like we're on video right now, and if you're just listening to this on Spotify, you're not listening and watching the video. But there's so many subtle cues that
Right.
we interpret from where our lips moving, or like where are our eyes, are we thinking? Because there's all these dimensions to human conversation that allow us to really easily, without much thought, know when the other person's talking. And I think it was really hard during, like, for example, during COVID, when everybody was wearing masks, it was very hard to have a conversation without like butting in because you're not able to read each other's lips and you're not able to see. So there's a big dimension, I mean, of proper interruption handling, proper conversation that occurs outside of speech that are more visual cues. And so when you see like these players like Sesame, which was a model that came out about a month or two ago, probably like 2 months ago, that was just really great at having natural interruption handling. And I think the way that they do it right now, I haven't read the whole paper. I've used the product, but the way that I would think about going about building a conversational agent is like, okay, one, you listen for pauses, you listen for spacing, and that dimension. Then the other dimension is that you have to be able to process what's currently being said, so you understand that is this mid-sentence pause? Is this like something that just probably requires the person the speaker to be thinking a little bit more. So you're actually like intelligently understanding what's being said, also taking into consideration how it's being said, but then you never have the visual part. So I think that like it might be an interesting world where if you have a camera on all the time, um, that will make it even easier for an AI to understand when to interrupt or uh,
I would
to
assume so.
not.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Right. It's funny you mentioned code because apparently I read this article. Apparently, a lot of people developed a visual cue of they would use their eyes to smile, basically. So people they would blink as an agreement. And so it's funny we subconsciously picked up these new expressions. It's almost a new body language trait we had to adopt to make sure we were communicating. But it's fascinating. I do think that the long game is like video, basically video, low bandwidth and micro expressions. Not just like the model understanding, but the model maybe having an avatar that smiles, nods their head to us, right? So that's like feel like that's always the upstream, from text to audio to video. Like
So
we're always like going upstream as we get can afford it, and it gets better.
no,
But
completely
yeah,
agree.
so coming back to so that's the voice part. But coming back to ElevenLabs though, they are the best. They have been, but the best for past 3 4 years, I guess. Since the gap has closed, thankfully, because more competition is good for us. You've alluded to other startups like Sesame and stuff. I would say,
Mm,
and we mentioned OpenAI. A couple of
right.
others I think I want to mention is there was a company called Play.ai, PlayHD.ai, I think
Right.
PlayHD.ai. They were uh, for a while they were in the running as the best highest quality voice. I think they messed up in their pricing and they never opened up their API until recently. Now you can actually play with Play.ai, PlayHD.ai on Fal.ai and other I think platforms maybe replicate as well. And they have very interesting models. They actually have an open API for text to dialogue, which we'll get to in a second with ElevenLabs. But you can actually do multi-speaker. So,
Mm,
like rather than just putting in text and getting the audio for one speaker, you can say speaker one colon, hey, how are you? Speaker two, I'm I'm good. How are you? And then you can just generate a whole full dialogue based on one text. Now, at Jellypod, we let you create these conversational these conversations, but we have to do a lot of engineering behind the hood to make it happen and make it sound natural for you. But the cool thing about these models is like it just it's just audio, text in, audio out, multimodal,
hmm.
and number of speakers. So not just two, it can be speaker three, and it makes it much easier on our end to serve that once we have this capability to let you use it. But also you can imagine because we're using a lot of hand coded rules of thumbs, the more rules you have, the more edge cases and places where it can break. But if you just have a model that just natively can output this, the quality is just way better. So that's why it's so exciting to have these things. And sorry, no, I know we haven't gone to 11, but Level Labs does also have this model now. It's called text to
Right.
dialogue.
Right. And so is the text to dialogue model different than V3? Is it the same or is it the same
It is.
model or
I
okay.
think so. It's interesting. I think their UI is just text to speech, where you put in the text and you get the speech, and you can add speakers. But if on their API they have a text to speech endpoint, which is the old endpoint with the new model, and they have a text to dialogue endpoint. So they do distinguish between those two, at least on the API front. We don't have access to the
Gotcha.
API yet; it's not released to the public. But I think they
Maybe.
distinguish
I
it.
don't
I think
know.
under
I
the
don't know.
hood.
I don't know.
Sorry. Oh.
I don't know. I don't know. I think I looked right before this. I saw the API docs might be up on ElevenLabs,
Oh.
which would be annoying because we've been asking them for the API access, and
Yeah.
they're like,
Yeah.
it's not. I actually just saw an email from our account manager over there, and he was like, I think he might have said that it wasn't available, but then I looked on the website. I was like, wait, it looks like it's available. I haven't tried it. It was right before this call, so we'd have to
Love
see.
that. I tried the text to speech V3. It didn't work right before this call,
Oh, you did? Okay,
but
well,
hey, I mean,
maybe.
yeah, that'd be awesome because I think it's super exciting. And
Right.
yeah, so playai.ht, If you do want to check it out, it is available on File.ai. I wouldn't say the only thing is the speakers are limited, so you have to select from their pre-selected speakers. I think maybe you can actually upload some audio, but they do have that ability. The other one, sorry, let me finish Gemini, Play AI, and then I'll get to the other one. The other thing they have, which I think is super interesting, they're the only ones, as far as I know, that can do it. It's called audio inpainting. So let's say you have a phrase like, my name is Bilal. You generate that, and you're like, oh, I wanted to say my name is Pierson. instead of just changing the Bilal to Pierson and generating the whole thing, you can just say, okay, edit that one word. And the cool thing about this is it'll just charge you for the edit. So it's almost like the parallel is, I think, to images, because for the longest,
Right.
when it first started, we just could create images, and then somebody came out with image editing, where you could take the same image and edit like a part of the image. And that was
Right.
cool because you
Right.
don't have to generate it from scratch, and you don't have to throw, if you just have an image that's 90% there and you don't want to generate a new one that fixes the thing you were worried about but then breaks something else. Same with audio. If you really like the audio but you just messed up this one piece of the audio, you can just inpaint that. And I think this is super powerful, very new, slept on, but I think it'll be, particularly you can imagine when you have text to dialogue, you can pair that and you can have this long conversation and then just edit the snippets that you don't like. So very
Right.
powerful combination.
That's super interesting. And that's on Play AI or Play HC.
That's on FAL as well. They have a model there.
Yes.
I think usually the way these companies have, they have a model they host on FAL or replicate, but then they have a slightly more advanced model that's maybe part of their subscription. So it may be that their site has a better one, and then usually the way that's their, I guess, their play, and then you that model gets deployed. There's always some 3 month lag or something.
So wait, so just so I understand, I mean, is the Inpainting model a text-to-speech model that has Inpainting, or is it a different model where I could take, I have another snippet over here, and I take and then I just say, hey, change the last 2 seconds to um, something else? I mean, or is it like I have to generate the audio through the same model and
Yeah,
then
no,
inpaint
no,
with
it's
the
a
same
good
model?
question. So it requires an audio input to begin with. So you already need to have the audio. So it's always an editing thing. So you give it an audio URL, you give it the input text and the output text, and it
Right.
diffs between that.
Wow, so that's really cool. I mean, that's even awesome for what we're doing on JellyPod too.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean,
So I almost think of it as a post-processing step. You generate, so a good combo could be you generate from ElevenLabs the dialogue,
right,
and then you use the inpainting model to just make the edits. And assuming that it can deliver the same quality of the input, and it's not jarring, that it should that would be an amazing workflow.
wow,
Yeah, yeah. So very
that's sick.
interesting, and you can imagine, like, if you were doing text, the way you would do conversation before is like you would generate a bunch of like audios and have to concatenate them together intelligently. That's a kind of a hacky approach. You can say it's probably the way to do it, but it does allow you to customize each snippet because you're generating a bunch of files. With text to dialogue, it's one file, and so there's always been a question about how do you edit like the one big file, and maybe the inpainting might be the answer for that. So it's
Right.
very interesting.
No, that's super
Speaking of
interesting.
dialogue, sorry, one other model that I would be remiss not to talk about is because they are, I will say, like, they started this is Gemini actually, and people don't think about Gemini as an audio model, but actually Gemini TTS is available on AI Studio, and it's basically free. I mean, it's probably the most economical, and it's really good. So you can put in text, you can generate speech, but you can also do the same speaker one, speaker two text, and it'll generate the dialogue. And it's pretty good. It's pretty decent. The way there's two models. There's Gemini Flash TTS and Gemini Pro TTS. And just like Flash and Pro, the Flash is fast and efficient, still good quality, and then Pro is a little slower but higher
Right,
quality. I think that's
right.
how they're gonna divide it.
Oh, that's interesting. Wait, and you mentioned something. I mean, maybe people don't know about it. AI, what is AI Studio?
Yeah, AI Studio is it's the UI for using all of Gemini models. We'll leave links of all these after the show in the notes. But yeah, Gemini. If you want to try out Gemini, just Google AI Studio, and you go in and you can try text speech to speech, but also like just try all the models, and it's really good. Google, as we all know, I mean, anyone's used Google products, it is a pain to use them because of all the permissions and stuff. But AI Studio is probably the one Google product I've used which has been seamless.
Really?
I think, and I give full credit to the Gemini team for that, because they've basically built a parallel product where it's easy to go in there. You can play around with the UI. You can even generate the cool thing. One of the cool things I like about the UI is if you are just playing around, you can click the code button and it'll actually give you the code that was used under the hood to generate that, and you can just copy paste that if you're using you want to use it as an API, and it's easy to see the different configurations. So if you upload an image or a video, oh, this is how the API changed under the hood, so I know exactly how to work with a video or an image. It's like right there. So it's a very seamless way to go from the GUI to the API code level.
Interesting. So, like, do you think it's a good, like, for the people that are, I like the semi-technical kind of term where it's the people that are in the weeds with like automation softwares like Gumloop or N8N or Zapier, and then they're like super, they want to know like the AI studios. I think that's kind of like the audience of who this should be for, are the people that are, if you're super into the AI world already, you probably know what text to speech is. And a lot of the stuff that we're talking about is probably not, you probably know it. But I think when I'm sharing this with my friends, they probably had no idea what AI Studio is. So you think it's like a good spot for, but they're like smart and they could like Claude code their way to like a basic, web app. You think that's like the right place for them to go play around with Gemini? Is AI
Yeah, I mean,
Studio?
I'm biased, but I think AI Studio is super simple to play with. I have some people have complained about it, which I found surprising. I think it's a lot of.
Interesting.
I think honestly, I think Google, because it's Google, it always just is held to such a high standard, and people just like complaining about Google. So a lot of times I just see a lot of unfair criticism of that. That doesn't mean they're perfect. They have their issues. AI Studio, is it the prettiest UI you're going to see? No. Compared to ChatGPT, there are some annoying things like you can't just type a text and click enter. You have to actually run code and stuff. So it's like small things like that because most people who go there don't really use it like ChatGPT. They go there, they try it out, and then they get the code. They're developers. But it is such a slept-on resource because it's literally free. It's
It's
basically
free.
free
Oh,
to use.
nice. Yeah.
And Gemini Pro, which is the best, second best, best model right now out there, really good.
Right.
And so I do think Gemini is slept on. Most people think OpenAI or Anthropic are, the best, but I think actually Gemini is up there for
That's
sure.
interesting. I know. I the other day I downloaded this Spotlight replacement called Raycast. And it's been really cool. Like I've liked it, and it's kind of like it integrates into Mac as if Spotlight was AI native, and it also has a like desktop chat bot that you can switch between models. And it's really cool because you could also bring your own keys. So if you just want to plug in your Gemini key or your Anthropic key or OpenAI key, you could like use those. But you could also have like a subscription if you just wanted to make it easy, like $20 a month, just like ChatGPT Pro. And it like hooks in with everything, and like you can. We're not going to get into it today, but like MCPs and all these like other things that you could just prompt it to. I know we're getting away from text to speech, but the other day, I mean, yesterday you asked me something and I didn't know the answer, but I knew it was in our project management software somewhere. And I opened up Raycast and I said, hey, like look through all the issues and do some research based on these issues. Like go out onto the internet and figure out what's the best way to implement like role-based permissions in our app. And so I went through all our issues in Linear, pulled that stuff out, went on the internet, connected to Linear back, added the comment under as my name. It was pretty cool. And I'm like speaking into it too. So I'm like using speech to text to prompt my like AI operating system to go out onto the internet to connect to my project management system. It's pretty nuts. I mean,
Yeah, that is so interesting. I wonder how that'll evolve if, because maybe you will just integrate using MCP with Claude Code or whatever, like Raycast, Claude Code,
right,
linear, everything.
right.
Um,
Totally.
I,
I mean, that's kind of like what's happening too. Like Claude Code, I know they just had a MCP integration with Linear, so
mm,
that seemed pretty cool. So, but yeah, I mean, getting back to there's like one other thing I wanted to talk about real quick before we wrap up. Just like I think the two other things that we haven't talked about on text to speech were one, open source models and like how important those are, and also local models. Um, and I just wanted to bring this as like a thought experiment because we started off talking about like latency and the importance of low latency use cases like a phone call center. But I'd be like, it's really puzzling to me. I mean, the next Pixel phone or the next iPhone, they got to be able to have Siri running locally, like on a small model. That's there's no way that if you have a big text to speech model on the cloud or a big speech to speech model, like there's always going to be a latency delay and a penalty there versus having a small model that's either open source on your phone, running locally. So like you're not sending all your speech up to the cloud every time you ask Siri to go do something. It's like all happening locally on device. It's realistic. It's natural, and I think we're really close to that future. I don't know if
And
Apple
private.
will,
Yeah.
and private. So
Yeah. No, for sure. It's funny you mentioned that because the next one on my list was actually a model that I feel like is this hidden gem nobody knows about, but it is probably the best model, like small model, and it's open source, and it's called
no way.
Kokoro, and it's 82 million parameters, very small, so it can probably run on most devices. I run it on my MacBook as well, although it takes a while. Still probably want to use an API, but it's on Fall, it's on Replicate, and it's got a bunch of pre-made voices, but it is so good. And it is probably the cheapest model. I think for one, you can, for 2 cents, you can do 1,000 characters text to speech, which is like if you compare that to ElevenLabs, which is 30 cents, I think, right?
Oh wow.
Yeah, so that's what a 15x difference, and I I've used it in the past. It's really good. So definitely recommend if you guys are interested in open source small model, check out Kokoro. I think it is a variant of what's it called? Style, not StyleGAN, but Style. I forgot the name, but there's a series of open source model that are modeled about for that.
Interesting.
But
Right.
Coco's are good. Who any other? Oh, you mentioned Sesame. Sesame is a company. They have proprietary model, but they did release an open source model, like a 1 billion parameter model, which is pretty good,
Right.
supposedly.
Totally. And I know it's kind of comes full circle too. We were talking about like the open sourcing of the text to dialogue. I mean, like having a standard when it comes to generating speech. And for anyone like if you're a developer out there, and if you've ever built with Next.js or on Vercel, Vercel has this thing called the AI SDK, and it pretty much is a wrapper around all these model providers, making it really like easy because the shape of the API for OpenAI, like their responses API versus Gemini's slightly different, and to kind of if you want to switch between calling Gemini versus OpenAI without like sort of this wrapper layer, you have to change a lot of your code, and so you've seen like companies like OpenRouter or the AI SDK, like they've come out and say, hey, just use us as an abstraction to these LLMs. But we haven't really seen yet text to speech abstractions. Like we haven't seen the same sort of thing for text to speech, and I wonder if that's coming. So I know I met a guy recently, and his company just got acquired by Vercel, and he had essentially this platform. It's called Orate, Orate, and Vercel acquired it. And Orate was essentially the abstraction layer for text to speech models, where they were able to call ElevenLabs, OpenAI, Gemini, PlayHT, essentially with a unified interface. I never used it because it was acquired and then they shut it down. And now when you go to the website, it directs you to the AI SDK. So I wonder if they're going to embrace sort of the media gen text to speech in that because, I mean, it makes sense for any like no developer, nobody wants to be like locked into a vendor because they can't try the next
Or pay
newest
the
model.
subscription. I mean, from the it makes
Right.
sense. These companies, they're VC backed. They have investors, and so as we all know, recurring revenue is the golden standard, and so
Yeah.
everyone pushes towards a subscription. I get that, but it is very annoying if you just want to play around, especially if you're a developer and you want a bunch of options. You just want to pay for on demand, and there are other companies. I mean, Civ used to do that. I don't know if they still, but I used to use ElevenLabs through them because they let you use. And it's kind of a hack, right? I mean, you can think of it's almost like um, another middleman. You can literally just buy the business plan and then offer the hobby plan rates, but flexible. And you can be like, oh, one API key, but we have
Right.
a level labs, we have play. So, I mean, I'm sure people have done that, but
Right.
um, yeah, it is annoying that you can't just like simply use them. I would say that's not just a audio issue; it's also image image services issue, character lip sync issue. I mean, Hedra, etc. I'd love to try them, but they just have these expensive subscriptions, and
Totally.
same with video. With video, it's actually probably the best because for some reason VO3, Kling, Minimax, they're all on file relatively quickly. So at least you can play around with them.
Right. Super interesting. The Spaces movie is just crazy, and I mean that's kind of like our goal. I think is just we'll choose a topic on the weeks, and today was text to speech. Last week was text to video, image, media gen. This is like what we're trying to do. So we'll try to stay focused on the media side. I know we got into MCPs a little bit, but and some of the other stuff, but hopefully people find this interesting. I mean, I love having the conversation with you because I learn so many things from you just even during
No,
this time.
same.
So it's
And it's such an exciting space, as you said. Like even media gen, there's so much. I mean, we obviously focus on text to speech. This was our episode. Other things, just to kind of recap, this week we had Midjourney launch their model, video model, which is
right,
probably the. I mean, Midjourney is the most expressive image model, so it made sense that based on because of the data they had, they would also have the most expressive, cool video model. And
right,
I've been kind of going down this rabbit hole on Twitter of seeing amazing videos of animations and stuff,
right.
of people taking the old Midjourney images and animating them. And I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a whole like new like domain, because people have created so much good art and they can just animate it now. So very exciting. Minimax
Totally.
also is having an open source week. They launched their image to video model and text to video model called Halio. Kind of misremembered the name. It's called Halio 2. Really good. Supposedly as good as the best models out there. It doesn't have voice like VO3. VO3 is only like multimodal audio, but Halio 2 really good quality and it's very cheap. They have a light version which is only like 28 cents. Um, yeah, ByteDance also released their own video model, which is the light one is 18 cents. It's called Sea Dream, and not sorry, Sea Dance. Sorry, Sea Dance, and their Sea Dream is their image model, which is also supposedly the best image model, text to image model. So this space moves us so fast. Every week there's just new models and stuff. So this is why it's so exciting to be
And
here.
there was the other one, I mean, that you mentioned this week was the audio to video model, where it's like you throw in an audio file and then you get a video from the audio.
Yes, so there's a bunch of them. There's I don't think there's any new one this week, but the traditional ones is Hedra. I would say the big ones are Hedra. Hedra is probably the leader. They have Hedra Character 3, but you have to get sign up for their subscription. If you want to try Hedra Character 2, you can go on Sieve, SIEV. They have Hedra Character 2 there. There's also Lemon Slice, which is uh, supposedly good. They're both ridiculously expensive, and I know it's the cost of serving these models is ridiculously expensive. That's why they're expensive. But hopefully they'll get that down. But you can do some cool things. You can generate podcasts of like if you've ever seen those baby podcasts and stuff. We'll probably do an
Yeah.
episode on this area. I don't have the word for it. It's basically it's it's half lip sync because you're lip syncing, but also animating an avatar.
Right.
And now sorry you just made me remember the model I shared. I think now the next stage of this is we used to have one image, one guy or girl talking, and now you can do one image with multiple characters and they're talking to each other. And
Oh,
so
cool.
there's been a couple of models that are going down that domain. So exciting news for that. And there's probably the open source leader there is Hunyuan avatar, but really expensive. I did one of their videos. It cost me $1.40 for 5 seconds, and it took 10 minutes. So
Whoa.
yeah, I mean, there's
Wow.
a ways to go here to
It's
getting.
crazy. And I always thought it's like that's annoying today, but it's also so exciting because it's like
Yes.
this amazing. Like, you just see this the trajectory downwards. Like it's so expensive, and you just know based on technology and progress that this is going to go down to approach zero and
Yeah,
approach
me, I'm
instant
excited for
speed.
that.
It's
Every week, like at Jalpur, we get asked people like, "Hey, I love the audio and stuff. I just want to make some cool video on this," and they ask us, and we want to give to you that. But we're just waiting for
right,
these models to just get good enough and cheap enough. At this point, they are kind of good enough. To be honest, it's more the cost now. It's like starts usually there's always the quality goes up and the cost, and then it hits a certain threshold, and then this it's like the it starts getting cheap. And it's funny, I almost call it's similar to Roger Bannister's, like I call it the 4 minute mile. Like everyone has this, I've seen this like happen time again. I saw it with images with stable diffusion. Everyone says, oh, it's too expensive, too costly, and then one model comes out and it just blows everyone. I mean, the quality is basically similar, but it's like 10 times cheaper or whatever. And then within the next 1 to 2 months, you see a bunch of competitors matching that price. So you saw that with images, you saw that with audio with OpenAI, because ElevenLabs used to charge so much money. And then OpenAI came out and it was like 10 times cheaper. And then a bunch of other text to speech models followed. And now with video, I feel like we're having that 4 minute mile moment, because you saw the first like sub 20 second, 20 cent, 5 second video with C dance, and Kling basically has a amazing model at 25 cents. VO3, $6 for 5 seconds, but first audio model. And I won't be surprised that somebody basically comes out with similar audio, at least at 90% of the audio quality
Totally.
for 10x cheaper price. And so it's just going to open up a whole slew of options in the next 60 days, I think.
It's going to
So
be
very
wild.
exciting.
It's going to be wild. And I mean, what better place to know those updates than this podcast?
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean,
We're going to be there in the thick of it.
we're going to be there in the thick of it. Bilal's going to know every model that comes out, every price. It's crazy. I mean, you're just listing out all these prices. Like, how do you keep these in your head? Because
The trick
it's
is to
impressive.
not have a life.
Yes, it is. That is a good trick. Yeah. Oh, 100%. Well, yeah, I think it's a perfect time to wrap up. So if you've tuned in today, this is episode 2 of Creative Flux. I'm Pierson Marks. This is Bilal Tahir. And yeah, we'll see you next week.
Yeah. We got to come up with some sort of call off, like a call sign or so, whatever. Like,
Right.
right.
Right, totally.
For now,
We
like,
need
bye-bye. See you.
like the outro music. Yeah. Sweet.